easy to look at the Five of Wands and think that it is about conflict. But this card has so much more meaning than just conflict. And make no mistakes, it can mean conflict and competition. But let's look at what else it could mean. If we look at the card itself, if we look at the way they are holding the wands, if we look at the way where they are looking, we can get a feel that they look as if they are trying to build or create something. Some people consider that maybe they're trying to create a 5-pointed star, which would definitely resonate with the theme of the deck. There are suggestions that it was based on a photograph that Pamela Coleman Smith had of some people erecting a garden building. All of those would really resonate with me. I'm really focused on looking at the images in the cards, because that's why we have tarot cards, isn't it? We don't have tarot cards to memorize keywords. We have tarot cards to be able to look at the images and read the symbols. This is a defensive position. This is somebody who is holding their staff, perhaps like Little John from a Robin Hood movie, and they've got a good stance, they're holding the staff with two hands, they're looking down at whoever is waving those wands at them. This is a strong, defensive, slightly martial card with somebody using the wand as a defensive weapon. And we can really see the difference between the two cards here. So the Five of Wands, let's be clear, it can mean a competition. It can mean an argument or a chaotic situation, particularly perhaps if it's with other cards to do with arguments or aggression. Maybe the Knight of Wands, the Knight of Swords, the Tower, the Devil, the Five of Swords, the Seven of Swords. If you've got cards with sort of aggression, verbal aggression, arguments there, then it can mean that. But I want to look at it first of all. I've got my cards in a model now. Looking at the order of the entire suit of wands. Because when we look at a card, we can look at the other cards that are that number, and we can look at the flow of the cards in order. So an example could be the Ace of Wands. Oh my goodness, I have an amazing idea. I know something. I'm really inspired. Let's take an example. I want to write a book. I know what the book is. I'm so excited. Now the Two of Wands is where the duality, the procrastination, the potential and the hope start to come in. I have a great idea. I can really experience the potential, but I'm also slightly anxious about how to move forward with it. If you're not sure of the anxiety and hope in equal measures in this card, get yourself a heavy object, maybe a book or a plant pot. Go to your window. Try and look out of the window whilst also slightly looking over your shoulder to make sure no one's coming, and whilst kind of holding your heavy item up almost as a gift to the gods. And I guarantee you will feel exhausted very quickly. So this is, I have a grand idea, I'm really excited, but I'm also really anxious. Will it work? Will it work? And the Three of Wands is early success. I feel confident, I feel grounded, I feel optimistic. This is showing good, solid, early success. And then we get to the Four. Fours are about discipline, boundaries, fire, and the Suit of Wands is a suit connected with fire. Fire needs security, it needs structure, it needs boundaries. So the Four of Wands is an incredibly positive card. This is a card of real success. This is a card, if this is a card of, to use an example, an engagement, then this would be the marriage. So this is sort of the celebration of the success. But a really important symbol, and this is why we need to really look at the imagery and not remember keywords, is the bridge. From the moment of celebrated success, which is these two, there has to be a change, and that change at some point probably will lead to sadness, because that is the human journey. We cannot linger too long in any one card, not even an incredibly delightful or positive one. And so I often see the Five of Wands as going from a place of, I've got this, oh my god, it's really working. If we were talking about the book, writing a book, I've got an amazing idea, but I'm really anxious. Is it good enough? How do I start? I've written the summary, I've got the chapter headings, I'm really confident. Maybe I've shared it with a mentor that I trust, maybe I've shared it with an agent or a publisher. I've got the go ahead, I'm really excited. This is, oh my god, but now I am spinning too many plates. How do I find the time to actually write and, keep up with my personal life and my paid job? I've got the chapter headings, but how am I going to find the time to research the book and write it in my given time frame? I've come to see the Five of Wands can be the beginning of the straw that broke the camel's back. You've gone from a place of success, security, even celebration, but nobody can stay there for too long. We're human beings. We need to learn. We need to grow. Change is the only certainty in life. So we always need to make that change, and change after a period of security can be really, or stability, can be really hard. If, using another analogy, this is the wedding, this would be, and now I'm pregnant. Delighted, but how on earth am I going to, build my marriage, pay down my rent or my mortgage payments, and cope with a young child? So, to me, there is a similar feeling between the two and the Five of Wands of, I do think there is a lot of positivity to both of these cards, but this is the procrastination of, I'm scared of starting because what if it isn't as good as I hoped? What if it doesn't go as well as I hoped? And this is, or this can be, I'm really invested in what I'm doing, but it feels a bit hard, it feels a bit chaotic, it feels too much. Another way that I like to think about the Five of Wands, and maybe this will really resonate with you, is like trying to put together a flat pack bookcase, preferably a really large one. And if you've ever done this on your own, which I have, you often get to that point where your knee is pushing one bit together and your elbows holding something else together, and you may even at this point be standing on one leg to use your foot as well, and you suddenly realise the Allen key is out of reach. It's that moment where you think, if I pull this off, I've done it, and if I don't, I have to start again. And all of the fives in the Rider-Waite arguably can be hard. And that, of course, is because 5 is the halfway point. And the halfway point is usually the most difficult point. When we were in Wales walking the other week, we'd really pushed, not Snowdon or anything like that, but it was a big mountain to us up near Festiniog. We'd really pushed on this long, hot day. We'd seen what looked like it was going to be the most beautiful view spot. We pushed, we were going to have our picnic there, and when we got to the view spot we realised it was a false horizon. There was no view. There was another slog to get to the viewpoint. And by that point you're too committed to turn back, but exhausted enough to know how much it's going to cost you to keep going to the end. And this can often come, I would say, decluttering or painting, redecorating a room is another classic sort of reflection of this, where you've cleared the room, you've painted maybe all your angles and your edges, and you're looking at the room thinking, oh God, it's I'm so far in, I have to keep going, but I'm utterly exhausted of doing it now. So halfway points are hard. And again, we have to look at the cards. Now, there's some readings where I don't like the Six of Wands. All of the sixes in the Rider-Waite deck, if you look carefully, show unequal relationships. But sometimes in life, you just need to trust yourself. And again, the Two of Wands needed a little bit more of that self-confidence. If we look at the clothing, maybe this is the chap from the Two of Wands. Maybe he's finally believed in himself. The Six of Wands can be fake it till you make it. Can be, I'm just going to bosh that screw in there and hope it holds together. Or it can be, no, I don't really have enough time now. I've got the go-ahead from the publisher or the agent to write the book, but I'm going to act like I have because, God willing, I will find the time. So to me, the Six of Wands in this story can be that, I'm just going to have to pull it together on this one. Now, much of me loves the Seven of Wands, and in particular that is the link to the shoe and the boot. I adore that little detail. We know that Pamela Coleman Smith, the artist, was working on the set design for the Taming of the Shrew when she painted this card. This is a direct link to Mercutio from the Taming of the Shrew. There are many ways you can connect with the Shakespeare play. There are several films that you could watch, but basically to me this is a sign of individuality. And for a more modern cultural reference, I always link this to Sailor Boy from Wild at Heart. This is a card, to me this is a card of standing your own ground, trusting yourself, believing in yourself. If we look at this card where he's had to dress fancy fine, he's had to wave, his laurel, he's got one laurel wreath, but Jesus is having to wave another at the top of a wand. This, to me, a lot of this is fake it till you make it. I should point out, I'm just back from a jousting weekend, and, a lot of it is bravado, a lot of it is show. And this is, it's tough, but I've got it. And then we have a moment of ease. And I want to really compare the Five of Wands to the Eight of Wands, because here we can see there is that moment of, is it coming together or is it falling apart? Is this carefully coordinated or is it raw chaos? Whereas in the Eight of Wands, all of the wands are in parallel. This to me is a card of things coming together. That could be for good, or it could be a sudden awareness that, oh God, this isn't working for me. But it usually is a card of things coming together well. For me, the big warning in the Eight of Wands is don't micromanage. There are 8 wands there. It's a lot. Arguably, it's too much. They seem to, if you look at the way that the card is visually presented, they seem to almost fill the space. And we could even argue there's like a 2 and a 2. Is there a 4 then? You're just about managing it. I often read the Eight of Wands of, you've got a lot going on, you need to really step back, you need to not micromanage, you need to manage your time incredibly efficiently, because the Nine of Wands is when you are determined to cope with more than you can manage. And I've actually often seen this card represent hypervigilance, and although I never clinically diagnose, I have seen it reference multiple times complex PTSD and the trauma response of, I need to be hyper independent, I need to be always ready, I need to do everything by myself, I've got this. Because if we compare it to the strength and the confidence of the Seven of Wands, you could argue his face is a bit wild, but hey, if I was fighting six people waving their wands at me, I'd probably look like that. But in the Nine of Wands, he's leaning on his staff, he's clearly wounded, and he seems to be either checking that his balustrade of wands is secure, or maybe looking over there to see what's coming next. And to me, a very common experience of trauma is to never feel quite secure, to always expect. It's easier to expect the worst because then you're never disappointed. Very much that sort of energy. Until we get to the Ten of Wands. Now, I mean, the good meaning of the Ten of Wands, which I have actually seen many times now, is moving house, moving office, you know, a movement of a property or belongings of some sort. So if that resonates with your reading, that can be an incredibly positive meaning for that card. The Ten of Wands can represent that you have chosen to take on an awful lot, but at this point you've decided it's worth it. If we go back to my writing the book analogy, the Six of Wands is I'm just going to believe I can do it. The Seven of Wands is wow, I've stood my ground on a couple of things. I've said no to a couple of people. I've got a better hold of my schedule. It's I've got it. You know, my schedule only just works. If anything overruns, I'm screwed, but I can just about do it. But the minute that I start worrying about it, the minute I start double checking everything, I realised that it was always a little bit too much. And then the Ten of Wands, so it can be, I'm just going to keep going with this book because it's worth it and there's a deadline and I've decided to do it. But of course it can mean chronic over-busyness, chronic overwork, work addiction. It could also be OCD, you know, just keeping busy to try and avoid connecting to this feeling of hypervigilance and exhaustion. And what we really want is the Ace of Wands, that bam, I've got an amazing new idea. And so I do see that these as a circle, and from the 10 of course we go to the 1. And at the moment I do see myself very much as the 5. For the last couple of years, although things have been tough, on the whole, the Four of Wands, they've been quite stable. There's been a pattern to life and it's worked. And now as life, you know, life does this time and time again, I feel like I'm having to restructure and feel like I'm having to make changes, and I'm not quite sure how to find the space, the energy or the time to make that changes. And we've got to be careful with the Five of Wands because we actually often can't go back into the 4. Often this is a moment of natural growth, that we've outgrown this 4. And sometimes I almost feel with this card that, you know, we don't want to cross the bridge into sadness, regret and depression. So maybe the right choice is to mix it up, to add things new, to allow ourselves to grow in confidence. And maybe the trick here is when we get to these, I've lost my 10, arguably less empowering cards in the Suit of Wands, maybe the trick is to recognise it quickly, to be aware of it and find ways to move us back to the simplicity and the inspiration of the Ace of Wands. So I think we do need every card in the Suit of Wands. They are a complete set, but there are definitely certain cards, arguably we could just choose the golden ones, even though I quite like the Seven of Wands. There are, you know, the trick I think is to really enjoy when we're in a Wands moment that is positive, uplifting and enjoyable, and to recognise when maybe we are in a less difficult one's moment, and to find the most effective way to learn our lessons and move through it.